That's how they did us with predictive programming, feeding us lies over and over and over till you eventually start thinking, because they fed it to you for so much, for so long, you eventually created it that, yeah, it's real. Because why would, lie to me? Why wouldn't they not lie to you? They took everything from you.
Mm-hmm. Look, that's just an asinine question. Why would they lie to me? Because they want to be who you are and they want to have what you got. You just don't know what you got, so you don't know how to recover what you already got. So you crying and bitching because you suffering because you don't got your own shit. Soon as you get your own shit, you can't suffer no more.
Exactly. And see, people want to make like, oh, the racism is just running so rapid in America. That's so quote unquote, it's prejudice. It ain't racist, it's prejudice. That's right.
Racism is a military structure. It's definite. Okay. It's a military application of a caste system.
Yes, a part of the caste system.
Right. But remember, the skin colors that they giving us, black and white, they take all of the guys, give them one name as one person, and you change those names in the translation, and the layman will never know.
Right.
But the biblical seminarians know they lying to the people, and in order to get they preaching certification, they just go along with the lie.
That's what we do.
Go along to get along. So if you continuously go along with the lie, you can't liberate nobody or free nobody's mind because you live in a lie.
But I'm gonna say this, Rod, just like I've said when the times when Grand Sheik has made this like sort of like blanket statement about all preachers already know, and all preachers do not know, because all preachers don't go to seminary. All preachers, and if they do, like me, they may go to a college that has a specific evangelistic focus, and is not even in comparative religion. They're always putting Christianity up as the this is the example, and anything other than is an abomination. So they basically, when they do comparative religion, it's not to give you an opportunity to see that there are other sources of information that are historical and factual that this stuff is based on. Most preachers sit in churches and have sat and listened to preachers from the pulpit, got pulled into believing that they were called to do the same thing that preacher or bishop or whoever was doing, and then they get to do it, and they do it from their heart. It is later on when they get into the inner workings of what goes on behind closed doors in the back room, and the conversations and the humanity and lack of divinity of those men and women of the so-called cloth. It is then that they see the hypocrisy, and I'm speaking from experience, then that you see the hypocrisy of what's really going on, and you got to question whether any of this ish was true, because they're just out there doing this thing, but they're living a whole different lifestyle. So in defense of the ones who went in with their heart and soul in it, and didn't know that it was what it is, then I'm saying all don't know. But what I do have a problem with those who, once you find out, that they continue to perpetuate that.
Well, one of the things about those who go through the seminary that know, and those who come in as they call those hands-on preachers. They was taught hands-on by somebody in the church that helped them to learn how to basically run the church. Those are not as responsible as the ones who go read it in its original language, understand that it don't say what they're telling you to say.
Absolutely.
It's a writing by Khalil Gibran called John the Madman that expresses the sentiment of you telling these people lies. I'm going to tell them what's really in the book. Right? There's so much stuff in the Bible that you can use it for any form of manipulation you choose to, if the people don't understand their own spiritual development. It becomes a easy tool of exploitation for those seeking to be wealthy. It's a way to get a whole lot of material gain for well-placed lies. They don't have to know they lying when they come in, but at some point, the discovery is imminent. You cannot continuously read that Bible and preach, because when you start preaching in front of a group of people, most people don't know this. You start off, you might be a fraud, but you start getting messages. Hey, stop telling them lies to the people, right? And sometimes the message might come from a 3-year-old in the church saying, why that preacher lying? Right? I know when I was 6 years old, I knew they was lying because I asked my mama and got my shoulder ringed off. She wasn't mad at me for saying it. She was mad at me for saying it in church. Mama, why that man up there telling that lie? I was in Grand Rapids. We was living in Grand Rapids at the time, Grand Rapids, Michigan. I was Pastor Abney preaching. And he was going over the standard Jesus script. And this was my first time really, really, really listening as a child to somebody tell the Jesus story. He told it exactly how he's taught to teach it. And I immediately said, this man lying. As a 6-year-old. And it was a blatant outburst. All the church ladies turned around looking at me. And it embarrassed my mama to the point where she pinched me and wrung my shoulder off, got me crying up in the church. Talking about, you can't be saying that up in here. And then when we got home, later on, she talked to me, and then, because she did, even if she disciplined us, she still talked to us.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't just discipline us and didn't never give us nothing. She gave us a lot of wisdom, even though she did spare the rod, spoil the child. I don't think she gave me enough ass whoopings. Whereas some of my siblings might feel like they got too many. Right? But when
Where
I look
did
at
you fall in the, are you youngest, oldest, middle?
I'm the 7th child. And
Of how many?
it was originally 10 of us. It's 8 of us left.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll be number 7. My mama was number 7 and her daddy was number 7.
Okay. Significance. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what they call a lightning strike. And my grandmama got struck by lightning.
Really? I mean, actually.
Yeah. She was working on the fields of Mississippi down by Macomb, Magnolia, Tylertown area. And the storm came in and she got struck by lightning. That was my mama's mama. My mama said I think my mama was 5 years old when it happened. She never stopped grieving her mother her entire life.
Oh, so she did not survive the lightning strike.
No.
Wow. Right.
That's where it ended her. But her spirit was strong in my mama. And it was due. So this goes back to the psychic connections with people. It's from the heart chakra. And it's from the place of pure love. And this is why most people can't never attain psychic abilities, is because their heart is confused with the ways of the world. Right? So those with the golden heart can shine the brightest, but they first have to get the charring off from being exposed to the dirt of society. And that's what we're working on. That's why we're here. That's what our karmic debt in being here is, to clear it by following our path of our book of life. You don't know what your book of life is until you get a certain level of awareness and look back on your life, and it's what they call dying while yet living. It's part of doing shadow work while you're going through the dark night of the soul. So when you look back on your life, you see certain patterns, key names, key figures, who's influenced what.
And archetypes. You see certain archetypes.
So archetype is part of the required study in the priesthood to allow you to understand which aspect of God you're dealing with. The highest aspect of God we call Big Mama. And the next highest aspect of God we call Big Papa. right? Big Mama feminine, Big Papa masculine, but we call them the old energies, right? So when you hear about them, call them the gods from days of old. It's written in a lot of the texts around the world, but don't nobody know what it means. Because they don't call for help, they can't get none. They calling the wrong names, right? Jesus is spelled Iesous in Greek, right? Using applied grammar, IE becomes fused as I, S, U cancels out the O and makes the US sound us. So when you pronounce it as a single word, it says ISIS. But the story that it's telling is not the story of ISIS, it's the story of Moses or Horus, right? So the character, the Old Testament was written as a recovery text for the New Testament, meaning the New Testament was written first.
We were told always told in the church and in Bible college that the Old Testament is the new concealed and the New Testament is the old revealed, and that's the way they kind of played it off. But
because they got to give you the right to discover that the Old Testament is written after the New Testament, which turns religion on its head.
And we were also taught that there were 400 silent years between the ending of the old and book of Malachi and the beginning of the new, and that in those 4 years God was silent. What we do know now, those who study, is that those are years of what I guess sort of Reconstruction, which ended up being a Renaissance afterward. That was when they were the Piso family and the ones that were
so the misunderstanding comes in.
The ones that were writing, like you said, the one to try to make the two in agreement. That 400-year period, that nobody could read the so-called Bible because they were putting it together.
Right, but that 400-year period is actually a period where apocryphal books was written,
which they, for the most part, disqualified from that. Like the Gnostic texts. They didn't want us to read the Gnostic texts.
Right. Well, not necessarily. They called the apocryphal books.
The apocryphal books, and then later on, the Gnostic, anything that was in Gnosis knowledge, we weren't supposed to have that. We were just supposed to believe.
Right. So they got several different groups of information that comes from this understanding of missing books of the Bible. First, source material. Because when you source material back, it's a book called Black Gods Who Wrote the Bible. No, Black Africans Who Wrote the Bible. Right? Because the Bible was written by Etruscan Moors for the purpose of military conquest, and it was compiled and rewritten, I should say, based off ancient texts in order to control the narrative. And the controlled narrative is what Rome has been doing the whole time.
True.
I used to always hear my father say, when you look for the troublemaker, all roads lead to Rome. I don't know what he's talking about. But when I followed it religiously, I ended up with the Nicene Council in 325 AD. When I followed it back politically, I ended up with something called Plato's Republic. When I followed it back socially, I ran into something called a Greco-Roman Empire. When I ran it back from a athletic perspective, I ended up with the Olympiad. So I always ended up in Rome. Mm-hmm. So when I started tracing the dirt doers back, they went straight to Rome. They went to the Nicene Council, 325 and 327. They went back to the ancient writer Origen, who was what they call a first century philosopher. They went back to Saint Augustus, another first century writer of Christendom. How can they be first century writers of Christendom when Christendom don't come about into the 300s? So they lying to us automatically.
Then you had the council of, what's it called, Chalcedon, 451, where they put together the edict of what the Bible was going to be good for. You know what I mean?
Right. So this
Here,
is when they was.
yeah. Can I read that? Just a little paragraph sentence.
Yep.
It says this council of the Roman Catholic Church, this wise and saving creed, the gift of divine grace, was sufficient for a perfect understanding and establishment of religion. So for its teaching about the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit is complete, and it sets out the Lord's becoming human to those who faithfully accept it. So agenda, they created religion, they created the characterization and the deity of God as a part of what they were doing, and it's in their writings.
Yeah, so it's never been a secret. I was going over the bloody oath of the papacy to murder the kings, princes, and people of the land with young elder, because they put this stuff in the public domain, but most of us don't know we really seriously is in a spiritual war. In spiritual warfare, you have to fight it spiritually, and the effects is going to trickle down to the physical. If you try to fight it physical first, that's like putting the cart in front of the horse.
Right.
Right? You going out the world ass backwards, as my father used to say. Right? So when you put everything in its proper place, don't give it a judgment, and then step back and look at the big picture. Right? So they wrote all of the dirt down that they was gonna do before they done it. That's to absolve them from karmic debt before they do the act. Because now, if you agree to follow through with what they said they were going to do, that was your free will being exercised. They just influenced it. That's why they say the devil don't never tell you what to do. He just suggests it to you. It's just a strong suggestion by a power base that appears to be legitimate. And the appearance of legitimacy is predicated on the paperwork. Because if you don't have the degrees, you should not have the knowledge. Right? Which takes me to the next phase of my incarceration, where I thought I was doing all this studying in vain. So here we are 5-6 years later from hearing this lady in the day room in Cook County telling me to get a PhD. And I'm getting headaches from reading so many books so fast. Right? And the headaches is to the point where they're annoying to me that I don't want to read no more. Right? I don't know nothing about the nutritional burning that the brain is doing. But we go to a Black History celebration, and sister brings in a African dance corps. She was out of Detroit. And she don't know what this lady said when I was in that day room. And she sat there and she said, some of y'all gonna get tired. Y'all gonna think y'all doing everything for nothing. Y'all gonna feel like it's a waste of time, and that you doing a whole lot of research and studying in vain because it's not getting you nowhere. She said, but don't let that deter you. Get your PhD anyway.
So here, it was like a divine relay system. One passed the baton to the next to come. And when you needed a recharge, when you were your battery was running down, when your faith in what you were doing was running down, then the Most High, Big Mama, sent in reinforcement to reinforce what you've been told.
When I used to get
let me see. See, y'all, they messing with us. Let me see. Let me see if he comes back in, y'all. Okay, let me get him back. Are you there? Can you hear? Say something?
Can you hear me now?
Now I hear you. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So can you repeat
So
that
I was
last
saying,
statement?
yeah, I was saying after the lady said that the second time, I went and talked to my mother on a visit. She had came up that following weekend. And I said, Mama, the strangest thing happened to me. And I told her the story of the first lady. And I said, then last week this lady came in here, or earlier this week the lady came in and said that, and I told her the story of the second lady. And my mama said, that's the Lord talking to you, baby. You need to listen. She said, but you're going to hear it from somewhere else. Just pay attention. So I'm on the yard and I'm talking to a brother who was a recovering addict and alcoholic. And didn't nobody used to sit and talk with him because he was a recovering addict and an alcoholic. Can you hear me, Dr. G?
Yes.
Okay. Because you froze on my end. That's why I had to ask you.
Oh, okay.
So we was sitting there talking. And he said, man, I be trying to tell these young guys around here, man, all this time